Number 15. Final words. It was 2008 in Minnesota. A 19-year-old college student was heading home one day when he wound up in a ditch on a gravel road at night. He called his parents on his cell phone to get help. When they began looking for him, they couldn't find his car and spent 45 minutes searching for Brandon, who was on the phone with them the whole while. He said he could see the lights in the distance. He thought it was a town nearby, so he was walking toward it when, suddenly, he shouted 2 words. That would be the last anyone heard of Brandon Swanson. Brandon's car was found, not in the area he said it was, but volunteers and dogs never did find Brandon. Even after searching for 120 days, the phone records showed that he was never near any town. So what lights had he seen? Could they have been extraterrestrial? Only Brandon knows. Number 14. Static calls. Have you ever had a phone call that haunted you for life? Redditor Mastrias's brother did. He wrote, "A few years ago, my brother would get a call on his cell phone around 2 to 3 a.m. Every night, he would answer and it was this hellish sounding noise, like static mixed with screams. What would you do if you got a phone call from hell? You'd probably change your number." And that's exactly what his brother did after a month of these calls. When he did, it stopped, but not for long. After a week or so it began again. Mastrias writes, "The exact same noise, exact same time." Finally, one day he decided to backdial the call. It was an old man that had no clue what he was talking about. Still, the calls persisted. If he didn't answer, it would call a few more times. No messages were left. Now what? What would you do if changing your number didn't prevent Satan from calling? Probably switch your phone company, right? That's also exactly what his brother did. He ended his contract, changed phone companies, and even got a newer number. When he did, it stopped again, but not for long. You guessed it, the screaming static calls continued after a short delay. Mastrias writes, "By this time, he was terrified every night, unsure why this was happening. He backdialed the number again and got a different person. Who was making these phone calls? When he backdialed, the person on the other end of the line again seemed to have no clue what he was talking about. His brother then lost his job and no longer had a phone contract. Thus, no more calls, right? Not quite. His mother received a strange message on her home phone, and when the boys listened to it, they heard the static screaming. At this point, Mastrias's brother was completely freaked. He called the number back. It said the number was disconnected this time. Mastrias said, "Never heard from it again after that. Souls screaming out from below. That just gave me the chills." Number 13. Phone call to hell. Another Redditor, Elmerte17, experienced a similar satanic phone call, only he didn't receive the call, he dialed it. "I was calling a friend one time, dialed his number, didn't hear any rings, but there was an immediate click like someone picking up, followed by a lot of weird noises, some sounding sort of electronic, and others creepily like human screams and wailing. It was like accidentally dialing a fax machine, if the machine was powered by souls." The fax machine again. At least this demonic fax machine wasn't dialing him. After repeated attempts to change his number, like the previous victim, I hung up, hit redial, and got through to my friend, who said he never got my previous attempt. OP explained. Number 12. The Titanic Mystery. Redditor Alex the Great posted this interesting mystery phone call that will have most of us diving for the history books. Violet Jessup was a woman who survived the sinkings of the Titanic and the sister ship Britannica, he writes. Years after her retirement, Violet claims to have received a telephone call on a stormy night from a woman who asked Violet if she saved a baby on the night the Titanic sank. According to Alex, Violet answered in the affirmative, to which the caller said, "I was that baby." The caller then laughed and hung up the phone. This was all recorded by Jessup's friend and biographer, John Maxtone Graham. He believed it was just some village children playing a practical joke on Jessup, but in response, Jessup said, "No, John, I have never told that story to anyone before I told you now." According to Alex, records indicate that the only baby on boat 16 was the sad Thomas, who was handed to Edwina Trout and later reunited with his mother on the Carpathia. Was the sad Thomas the mysterious caller, or was John Maxtone Graham right in thinking this was a practical joke played on poor Jessup? Number 11. Carnegie Call. Andrew Carnegie Whitfield was the nephew of the famed Andrew Carnegie, the industrialist that Carnegie Hall in NYC is named after. Yeah, that guy. Well, this nephew and namesake of his was an amateur pilot. One day, in April 1938, he departed Roosevelt Field, Long Island, headed towards Brentwood, an airfield nearby. The flight was routine and should have taken Whitfield, a skilled pilot, no more than 15 minutes. The sky was clear, the day was calm, but he didn't make it to Brentwood. Of course, being a Carnegie, a search was launched immediately when he seemingly vanished. Whitfield was believed to have plenty of fuel, so they assumed he just landed elsewhere nearby, but in spite of an extensive search, Whitfield was never found, and neither was his plane. An investigation into the matter only deepened the mystery. Investigators found that Whitfield had checked into a hotel on Long Island under the alias Albert C. White. Earlier that day, all of his stuff was in his hotel room, along with some stocks and bonds and 2 life insurance policies of $6,000 each. Whitfield's wife was the beneficiary. This is where the mysterious phone call comes in. Phone records showed that a phone call from the room was made to Whitfield's home that day. This was in the deja phone operators, and what the operator claimed to have overheard was Whitfield saying to the call's unidentified recipient, "Well, I am going to carry out my plan." Then he hung up. What was this plan? Why was Whitfield in the hotel under an alias? What was up with these life insurance policies and all the rest? Authorities believed Whitfield had driven his plane into the sea on purpose, but they never found anything to confirm this theory. Others undercut this theory by pointing out that Whitfield had no serious financial or personal issues and was happily married, so would have no reason to do such a thing. Others think he ran away from his life for reasons unknown, and some alleged sightings of Whitfield were made in the years thereafter. Whatever happened, the phone call he made home remains a mystery to perhaps everybody but Whitfield and the call's recipient. Number 10. The Zodiac. 25-year-old Donna Lass was a first aid station nurse at a South Lake Tahoe casino. One day, in 1970, an unidentified male made a phone call to both Lass's landlord and boss to let them know Lass had some personal issues, an illness in the family, and would be leaving town for a bit. Lass's boss must have had a sixth sense because he wasn't buying the story. He called Lass's mother and verified it was a lie. They found Lass's car at her apartment, but she was nowhere. The last entry she made in her logbook at work appeared as though it had been cut off before she finished it. 6 months later, the San Francisco Chronicle's reporter, Paul Avery, received a postcard that somewhat clarified the mystery of Lass's disappearance. The Zodiac by that time had sent a series of cryptic messages. He may not have been responsible for her disappearance at all. He may have only been claiming credit for it, as only an insane man would do. But if not the Zodiac, who made those phone calls? Number 9. The non-existent phone call. Redditor 7 Ralphie has a mysterious phone call story that will chill you to the bone. He and his family were in the process of moving to a new state, and his father went to check out the progress being made on their new house. In the meantime, they were staying at a Motel 6, on the bad side of town. His was the last room on the top floor. As he tells it, in the middle of the night on the last night he was in town, he was awoken by the phone ringing in his room. He groggily answers. It was the front desk, and they say something along the lines, "Sorry to wake you, but we've been receiving a couple of reports about rooms being broken into and some stuff being stolen. We are calling to make sure you lock your door and are safe." My father replies that he is fine and hangs up. Creepy enough to be called in the middle of the night like this. But what comes next is even creepier. To be on the safe side, the OP's dad decided to get out of bed and check that his door was locked, but as he sat up, he saw it was ajar. He checked the room, only to find that nothing was missing and no one was there. He peered out the door and finally discovered something odd. His shaving kit was sitting on the windowsill in the hallway right outside his room. He grabbed it, shut and locked the door, and then quickly called down to the front desk. The OP said his father told them, "Hey, you just called me about the break-ins around the hotel, and I just want to report that my room was broken into when I was sleeping. Nothing stolen and I am fine. Figured you would like to know." And bemused, the front desk replied, "You must be mistaken. We never called your room, and we haven't received any reports of break-ins. Was the phone call a dream? Had the OP been sleepwalking? If not, who entered his room? And why did they take his shaving kit and leave it in the hallway? All I know is, I wouldn't want to get that phone call in the middle of the night at a Motel 6. Number 8. The masseuse. Sick of telemarketers phoning you up? Redditor Komaene has had her fair share, and this mysterious and rather creepy phone call tops them all. She wrote, "I picked up the house phone once, and a guy launched into this long spiel about how he was training to be a masseuse and wanted to work on foot massages, specifically on females. When I told him we weren't interested, he carried on asking if he could interest me in a free foot massage. Despite my repeated insistence that no, I'd rather not, until I eventually hung up. Was it a spoof, a real masseuse, or perhaps just some sad sap?" The OP said, "The bit that makes it creepy, I was 10 and had a pretty obvious kid voice." Number 7. The foreign language. On April 10th, 1990, Billy Joe Neesmith and his crew set off from the coast of Georgia in their snapper boat. 4 men aboard, only 1 came back. The other 3 men were Billy's brother Nathan, his nephew Keith, and his friend Franklin. On the second day, the boat's hold had filled with a foot of water, the power went out, and the pumps stopped working. The men couldn't radio for help, and after trying to bail out of the boat to no avail, Billy ordered the men to abandon ship. The men boarded their rotting life raft, but it wasn't really built for such a large load. Nathan took it upon himself to ride in the sunken boat's hatch cover, separating from the other 3. He swam to the boat's hull, and soon the lifeboat was miles away, and he could no longer see it. The next morning, he saw a freighter approach. It was a few miles off, and he watched it as it seemed to stop and pick up the 3 castaways. Meanwhile, Nathan was able to create a raft from a dislodged bait box before the boat completely submerged. He was adrift at sea for another 3 days before he was rescued 20 miles from the coast. The US Coast Guard searched for his crewmates, but they were never found. Still, Nathan held out hope that the freighter had saved them. Months went by without a word from his crewmates when, on October 10th, Nathan's sister received a phone call entirely in Spanish, but the caller soon hung up. The owner of the boat also received a similar call later that day. It wasn't until March 1991 and 5 phone calls later that a full English sentence was heard. "I am bringing them home." The family believes those who had saved Nathan's crewmates were trying to get the men home, but the men haven't appeared or communicated with their family, and no more Spanish-speaking callers have rung them since. Perhaps the saviors were actually captors, perhaps they were enemies of the states, or maybe the men had never been saved in the first place. Number 6. The call is coming from inside the house. Have you ever gotten a call from a stranger that made your heart stop? Reddit user Elliot509 has. Elliot got a call from someone he didn't know. When he asked who it was, the caller said, "Why do you want to know?" Thinking this was surely a prank, Elliot remained silent, to which the creepy caller responded, "I can see you." Elliot wasn't having any of it. He said that this wasn't very original. Just then, a train passed by Elliot's house at that moment as he lived near the train tracks. On the other end of the line, Elliot heard the passing train. Cue the goosebumps. Was the caller really watching him? Was he in the house? We'll never know, as the caller then hung up and never called back to further torment Elliot. Number 5. A decade of phone threats. Born in Lebanon, Bashir Kauzachi was taken in 1974 in Beirut and kept for 5 days until his captors had to take him to a hospital from where he was able to escape. While no one knows exactly why he was taken, Bashir believes he was mistaken for a CIA agent. All his trials and tribulations seem to be over when he moved to Washington, D.C. in the 70s to run a Moroccan restaurant. His restaurant was thriving, his family was well, he was living the good life, that is, until a steady stream of harassing phone calls began. It was in 1983 that he first picked up the phone, only to be threatened by some insane caller on the other end. Then he started getting daily calls, sometimes multiple times a day. While these types of calls tend to tail off for most people, Bashir experienced them for nearly a decade. The caller started to imitate a little girl when making the calls. He wasn't the caller's only target. The caller also harassed the restaurant owner's wife and his employees. The caller evidently wasn't satisfied with these calls alone, because he also eventually keyed the Star of David into the man's Mercedes. Even when Bashir went to visit his sister in Philadelphia, the calls followed him. How? Why? Was the caller spying on him? Bashir had a mental breakdown because of these insane calls and eventually committed himself to a psych ward. While he was there, the calls continued to rain down on his restaurant. This is when the FBI stepped in and the mystery deepened. They discovered that it was not a single person, but a team of people. The calls originated from various payphones in different locations, at a rate that was impractical for a single culprit. All we know is that the intention to drive Bashir insane succeeded. The calls started slowing in the mid-90s, and the FBI closed the case, leaving this phone call mystery unsolved. Number 4. The Seer. Cyan B seems to be a seer. Will he use this power for good or for evil? In this story, neither really. Cyan was driving home with his mom from work one night when he asked her how his dad's computer class had gone. Cyan's mother said she wasn't sure and asked why. "Well, when I was speaking to him, he said he was having some trouble," Cyan answered. They had been given 3 assignments to complete, but he couldn't finish assignment number 2 as the computer wouldn't save as. I think he eventually managed to do them all though. Later that night, Cyan's father came home and knocked on his door, asking him how he'd known about the assignments and the issues he was having with them. "You told me on the phone," Cyan replied, dumbfounded. Cyan's father said he hadn't called him and he'd just come home from the class. So Cyan couldn't have known these details, as he'd had the conversation with his mom even before his dad had gone to the class. Cyan recalls vividly talking to his father about it on the phone, although the where and when of the call were suddenly fuzzy. It's deja vu all over again. Number 3. Area 51 call. An upsetting phone call was made to the host of a paranormal radio broadcast called Coast to Coast AM in 1997. The host spoke to a man who claimed to have worked at Area 51 and was sobbing over the call, saying his employers would triangulate on his position real soon. He claimed to have been released on a medical discharge and to have decided to make a run for it. The terrified caller spilled his guts about everything he knew about Area 51, about the aliens he encountered, and about the government conspiracy to cover it up. He seemed in real distress, but soon his connection was disrupted.
Will be more easily controllable.
Discharge.
I started getting...
Art, the radio host, returned a few minutes later as the station's backup power system restored on-air power. Art said that this had never happened at the station, and he believes someone was trying to stop listeners from hearing the truth. So what is the truth? We may never know. Number 2. Say again? A woman named Barbara tells how she received a phone call from her elder brother several years ago. The call was made at 4:20 a.m. and she spoke with her brother for 5 minutes, only to be told that he just got married. Afterwards, Barbara went back to sleep. Not long after, Barbara was visiting her mom as she met her brother and his new wife there. She thanked her brother for calling her about the exciting news, but her brother just stared at her blankly. "I called mom," her brother said, "but I never called you." Barbara's mother told her exactly what her brother had said, and it was the exact same conversation she'd had with him. Not only that, but he'd called at the exact same time. How could the two have received an identical phone call? Were they on the same call without knowing it? Maybe this one is just a case of crossed wires, or maybe she only imagined it. Before we get to number 1, my name is Chills and I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you've ever been curious as to what I look like in real life, then follow me on Instagram at DylanIsChillinYT with underscores instead of spaces. I also have a Twitter at YT_chills where I post video updates. I'd really appreciate it if you followed me, and feel free to send me a DM if you have any questions or suggestions. Also, I recently created a subreddit where you can submit videos and stories for future lists. It's r/chills narrator, and the link is in the description below. It's a proven fact that generosity makes you a happier person, so if you're generous enough to hit that subscribe button and the bell beside it, then thank you. This way you'll be notified of the new videos we upload every Tuesday and Saturday. If English isn't the only language you speak and you're interested in getting a shout out, click more, then add translations. By translating the video, not only will more people be able to watch it, but a link to your channel will be added in the description. Number 1. The September 11th call. Redditor Babat Baboon has a very strange, mysterious story about a phone call she'd received on the 3rd anniversary of September 11th. The OP says that her cell started to ring, but she didn't recognize the number, so she let it go to voicemail. But the caller didn't leave a voicemail. They simply called again and again. On the 3rd ring, the OP answered it, but there was silence on the other end. I opened my laptop and did a reverse number search. The OP said the number was a landline from a home in a neighboring state, but I didn't know anyone who lived there. The documentary was finished and names were being listed. Get ready for it. One of the victims' names was the same number as the number I had just looked up. Yikes. The OP thought it was just a coincidence, but when she googled the name, she saw that the address listed matched the destination of the phone number. I was starting to get a little weirded out, the OP said. I triple checked everything to make sure I wasn't imagining it, but it matched. I even showed my roommate later, who confirmed that they matched. I never knew this person, and if anyone had access to my contact info from a list or something, it would have been my landline. Wait, don't leave yet. I have something to show you. We made this top 15 list a little while ago and I think you're really gonna like it. Check it out and tell me what you think.